All right, welcome back, mates. JL Scott Fishing. Hope everybody's doing well. Had a subscriber question, and you know, I get this question a lot. And I look back, and I haven't done any videos on it, and I kind of really need to probably like get down on it. Today's pretty much planning day for trips from fall muskie trips, Upper James to Salmon River in New York. And I'm running on Dunkin' this morning. Late night doing some baits last night. Ooh. I mean, and that's what this video is about. Custom baits versus cereal baits. Again, I say this a lot. Cereal is an S, not C, not that we eat in the morning for breakfast. But cereal baits, they're usually machine run, mass-produced baits. And for the most part, let's be honest, made in China. Okay? It is what it is. That's the world we live in. And we did this to ourselves in the United States back in the 90s. We just offshored everything. Manufacturing, everything. Make things cheaper, whatever. Okay? And, you know, for a lot of people, there's a reckoning for that. Okay? To me, I'm not down with it. Okay? So, but I mean, everybody needs to make their own conscious decision. Everybody can do their own part. It's just one component of why I prefer custom or American manufactured American baits. There are plenty of quote unquote, you know, branded cereal baits that, from American companies that are made in the United States. Okay. There are rods made in the United States. There are any number of things. Okay. So you just have to search them out and find them if that's where you're coming from. If you're not coming from there, that's fine. I mean, that's a decision that you're making. Some people don't care. The phone, I'm sure the phone right now that I'm using to record this video was made in China. Okay. There are just things that you can do, you know, if you care about that. I consider them to be our adversary. I consider them to be, you know, one of the biggest threats to us as a country. Not only because of politics, not only because of our border and drugs coming across our border. There are all a number of things as to why I consider them to be an adversary of our country. And I don't personally want to support, you know, someone who's an adversary. That's just my opinion. And I think most people, you know, understand that. But at the same time, it is just fishing. And people don't think about that when they look on the back and it says made in China. Okay. I think they should. But again, that's just my personal opinion. I don't hold, it's like regular politics. Doesn't matter to me what your politics are. You know what I mean? Like, you do you. You know, all good. But, so you got to make your own decisions. So when I talk about custom baits to people, that's one of the bigger things I talk about is like, where are your baits made? Like, how are they made? How are you? When someone calls me a lot and talks about how, like, I got this great bait, but I've had to buy like 6 of them. I'm like, you've had to buy like 6 of them because they don't last. Okay, well, that's a quality, how they're made, okay, has a lot to do with, you know, at the end of the day, how much you're spending on baits, right? Like, and that's always been the knock on custom baits. And I've been there 15 years ago, 20 years ago. It was like, you know, $30 for a custom crankbait. $30, you know what I mean? And you're like, what? Like, okay. You know, and you're like, you know, you're just going to go to, you know, most people are going to go to the Dick's Sporting Goods, Bass Pro, Walmart, Academy, you know, wherever, as opposed to like, because a lot of towns don't have local tackle shops anymore, as opposed to, I prefer local tackle shops. My number one go-to tackle location is, Green Top in Central Virginia. I will drive an hour and a half. Like, you know, because it's 95 and there's a whole shit ton of traffic on 95 all the time. Sometimes it takes an hour and a half to get there. Like, okay, because they've always been me growing up. They started small. Now they're in a bigger location, but they still have that small town, small tackle shop, local feel, knowledgeable people. Doesn't matter whether it's guns, hunting, okay, fishing, doesn't matter. Okay. That's what I prefer as opposed to walking in a Dick's Sporting Goods to buy baits. Or Walmart, where no one's knowledgeable. No one knows anything. And it's all cereal baits, okay? A local tackle shop around my parts has all kinds of custom baits. All kinds. Snakehead custom baits, muskie custom baits. It has a whole bunch of stuff. Trout, especially, you know, because trout's really big in Western Maryland. And so, like, that's what I gravitate to. If I can't make it myself, or I can't, you know, contact one of the mates who's an awesome custom bait maker to make me something, and I have to go retail, that's where I prefer to go. Because I just think you get a lot more value when people can talk to you about a bait and give you situational awareness on when you should use the bait. All of this stuff you're going to get from custom bait makers. You're not going to get that from a serial bait manufacturer. They're not on the aisle, right? They're not even accessible to you, okay? And I know we all have this conception. I mean, as a kid, you guys know me, I've talked about it numerous times. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia. I went to those Bassmaster Classics back in the day. I mean, the early 80s. Those are the guys, those are the rock stars to me. Like, if those guys said anything, Rick Clunn, Gary Klein, Woo Daves is always going to be my favorite all time, no matter what. I don't care what happens on Bass. I don't care what happens with these young guns. I don't care. Okay, they will never be, to me, a Woo Daves. They won't. A Bill Dance. They won't. A Roland Martin. They won't. Because I was a kid that grew up in that generation. Now, to the current generation, you know, when I talk to kids today, they're all over Jacob Wheeler. They're all over Rod Smith. They're all over those. Good for them. That's going to be them for the next 20, 30 years. Okay. But like, so when they would tell you about brands and they would show you about lures, it was brand related. It wasn't custom. It was kind of like gospel, right? I mean, and that's the purpose. That's why brands sponsor those athletes, is they become marketing arms for them. Okay. But we're in a generation now that's become less and less and less prevalent. Yeah, anglers are still being sponsored, but us as the consumer have so much more available information to us out there, right? That we never had before. Okay. We were always waiting for that Bassmaster magazine to show up in the mailbox as kids, right? There was no, or go down to the ramp and talk to the old timers. There was no, or wait for an event to come into town to convince your parents to take you to the weigh-in, right? All that's gone, right? A lot of events don't have weigh-ins anymore, right? Okay? They just have trophy raisings, okay? Everybody's online now. You can go get information everywhere. Custom bait makers are all over online. Okay? These custom bait makers have TikTok channels with 100, 200, 300,000 followers. YouTube channels with 50, 60, 70,000 followers, right? And so there's an evolution taking place in the custom bait making industry, okay? Because they now can access more consumers than they've ever before. Most custom bait makers in the last 2 decades, prior to this decade, was all word of mouth. It was all local. I can tell you about trout flies, smallie flies, smallie, hair jigs, all local. That a guy would lift down his gate, pop all the lures on the back of his gate at the ramp, and people would buy them. That's the way custom bait makers used to sell. Now they sell, boom, online, direct from Instagram shops, direct from Etsy, direct from YouTube, TikTok, boom. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I do this year, and like this year alone, really in the last like 6 months, it is TikTok. I mean, people just send messages on TikTok, you know, boom, I call them on the phone, text them on the phone, hook them up, boom, out the door, gone, bye, see ya. Like, easy peasy. Venmo, Cash App, easy peasy. No longer just PayPal. So it's so much easier to have a relationship with someone, okay? That you can make that happen. And can give them what you want in terms of, okay, this is how my lake's set up. This is how my river's set up. This is what I'm fishing for. This is how I like to fish. All of these things, okay, are why, for me, custom bait makers are so much better than serial baits. Do serial baits catch fish? Yeah, almost all baits catch fish, mates. It's just a matter of you, the angler, and the comfort level, and how many fish those baits catch. Right? I mean, that's the thing. You look at a tournament like this last weekend on Upper Bay, the top 20, it was basically every bait you could think of. from frog to crankbait, to Texas rig, to Carolina rig, to swim baits, okay, to spinner baits, right? Chatterbait, of course, all over the place. So which bait is better, right? Like, again, fish want to eat, right? And so it's hard for people to make that kind of like going and buying cereal baits because they're always promoted on TV or always promoted by anglers, okay? And so we're embedded with brands. We're very brand conscious, okay? And so a lot of times custom bait makers don't cross our path enough for us to be able to even, a lot of people to even consider them, even when they are better performing baits, longer lasting baits. And that's what I tell people about. The real difference between custom bait making and cereal baits is I talk to people about like, okay, well, how, you know, like I don't want to spend $15. Jay, I don't want to spend $15 on a crankbait. That's absurd to me. I mean, if I'm going to spend that much, I'm going to buy a Lucky Craft or I'm going to buy a Megabass. Okay, well, you're going to buy that anyway. You just said that you would buy Megabass or Lucky Craft for $15 to $20 a jerkbait or a crankbait or whatever, but you're not willing to give XYZ custom bait maker who hand painted and sealed awesome trebles, all of that. You're not willing to pay $15 for that. Why is that? Because they don't have confidence in that yet, right? The brand that you see, okay, or that's on a jersey of an elite angler, okay, or a pro tour angler, that creates currency, okay? That creates a level of currency with the consumer that, okay, it must be better because it's that brand and that guy's wearing that brand on his jersey. Okay, that's all marketing, mates. That doesn't mean the baits are better. And I'm going to tell you what, the cold honest truth. A lot of those anglers are also throwing other baits that aren't sponsoring them. Okay? That's just a reality. Okay? And they may not be winning the tournament on their sponsored bait when they're up there. Have you ever sometimes counted how many sponsors? It's like NASCAR. Like how many sponsors a guy can have on his jersey? Okay? Right? I mean, that's a business decision, right? I mean, that's just that reality. Okay? But that doesn't always mean that he won that throwing the bait maker's brand that's sponsoring him. Okay? And if he does win the event and he doesn't mention that brand when he's up on the stage or in interviews, you can sure as heck bet he didn't win the tournament with that bait. Okay? So you got to factor in all that. It's just, again, you know, you've got commercialism. The fishing community has been very, very commercialized in the last 20 years. Okay? Very yes. And the influx of the internet and online and all that marketing. I mean, think about it. You have major boat manufacturers now that aren't involved in the tournament side anymore. They don't need to be, right? They've got all the other marketing arms now because of the internet and streaming and all this other stuff. And so what I try to tell people about custom versus cereal bait, right? Okay, so you spend $15 on a crankbait. How long are you going to keep that crankbait? Okay? Versus your soft plastics. And that's the argument is so many guys, especially in the South, throw so much soft plastic that they're spending thousands of dollars a year on baits. Right? They're replenishing their plastic because plastic doesn't last all season, right? You're going through bags and bags and plastics. You know, I know mates that'll go through a whole bag to a bag and a half of plastic on one trip on the Upper Potomac on a jet boat. Okay? Or Susquehanna. Right? That's $5.99, $6.99 a bag, right? Right? They go through a whole thing. Now, there are some that are better than others that are cereal plastic bait manufacturers because of the elasticity of their plastic, because of their formula. They do last a little bit longer. But for the most part, you're going to go through soft plastics like crazy. And you're going to end up spending hundreds of dollars in soft plastics versus you bought a $15 crankbait that's going to last you the whole season, next year, the year after, the year after, and the year after. Unless user error. Like unless you throw it into the friggin', you know, down trees and get snagged and can't get your bait out, right? But you're not going to, you know, you're not going to, that bait's not going to, if it's quality made and sealed, coated and sealed like most custom baits, hard baits, crankbaits, jerk baits are, you're going to have that thing for years. So yeah, you're spending $15 to $20 for one crankbait. But if you look at it in terms of that mentality of, okay, well, how much are you spending on soft plastics? You don't have a problem spending $5.99 for a pack of 8 or a pack of 10 soft plastics, right? But you're going to have to keep replenishing that soft plastic over and over and over again. Ultimately, look at the end of this season, how much you spent on soft plastics. What I try to tell people is transition to fishing custom baits, a third of the time, a quarter of the time. And you'll end up saving money in the long run on your fishing expenses by buying custom, because the custom's going to last longer. Plus, you've got them on the phone to be like, hey, my crankbait just took a beating. Can I drop it in the mail, send it back to you, and have you touch it up or repaint it, do whatever? Yeah, you can't do that to a major manufacturer. It's a point of sale to them. That is a point of sale transaction. That's what that's called. There's no throughput. Okay? You don't have a relationship with those manufacturers. You don't have a contact of someone you can call who immediately can give you an answer or immediately ship you out a replacement. If you're an bass angler on the Bass Tour, sure, you know who to call. But if you're Joe Schmo, do you know who to call? Right? You got a tournament coming up next week and the store's out of your cereal bait and it's your go-to and you can't find it anywhere. Do you know who to call at the company? Probably not. Right? And that's how they're set up. Okay? They are a point of sale, big box cereal bait manufacturer. Okay? There's a lot missing in terms of the relationship part of that transaction, right? Okay? That's why establishing relationships with local tackle shops is so important. Because the guy at Dick's, the guy at Bass Pro, the guy at these major big box stores on the aisle isn't going to know who the contact is, isn't doing the ordering for the most part for his big box store. So he doesn't know who the people are at the cereal bait manufacturing company. He doesn't know who the rep is, like for the most part. Someone there does, but the average person, young person working in the store, doesn't. Local tackle shop does. And so you get that combination there of a local tackle shop with custom baits made locally or regionally or just custom. And then you also have some cereal baits, manufacturer brands, because that's what attracts people to come to the tackle shop. And then most local tackle shops have live bait. Obviously, big box stores don't have that. So that's a whole nother area of, attracting consumers. But that's what I like to tell people to think about. It's like, yeah, there's custom bait makers, okay, that can set you up completely from start to finish in a run, with your order, what you want, the colors you want, the treble hooks you want, or the custom poured plastics, all of that stuff, and people have this misconception. It's like, oh, well, it's so much more expensive. But in the long run, it's not, because they're quality made and they last so much longer. You're not replacing and replenishing your tackle over and over every few weeks or so, right? Because you're losing baits or because the quality wasn't good. Everything about the bait. Think about this. You learn this in the military if you ever served in the military, but just remember, all of your gear, all of your baits are made by the lowest bidder. Okay? So like the treble hooks, the square bill, okay, the materials, all that stuff that goes into your bait, it's made by the lowest bidder. It's manufactured by the lowest bidder. So just think about that. Okay? And with a custom bait maker, they can do everything completely custom. So it's a little bit different. And so that's what I like to try to get people to understand that, yeah, a custom crankbait for $12 is more than the branded $8, $9, $10 bait. But even a lot, you need to watch here coming up here in the next quarter, because you're going to see a lot more branded cereal crankbaits over $10 because of what's happening in the world economy. And because those baits are made in China and they have to get here, and all the import fees and all the shipping fees and the price of gas, all of that is going to trickle back in to you paying 20% more for your crankbait, for your branded cereal bait. I don't see custom bait makers prices rise. I haven't seen it all year. They've made consistent the whole way. So just think about that when you think about custom bait makers and serial bait makers, and in the long run, how much more money you are actually going to spend. You don't think that you're going to, right? Because you're just looking at the individual point of sale price. Oh, I just spent $5-6 on plastics. But you're doing that 10, 15, 20 times a season versus working with a custom bait maker, a custom pourer. Yeah, the price may be a little bit more because they're smaller and they've got their expenses, but your baits are going to last longer, especially hard baits. They're going to last longer, and you're going to get every bit of value out of that bait. All right, mates.